thank you, Tim, and you guys have been so gracious. I love your sharing with each other. It's really wonderful, warm feeling to be here. I'm really excited about it. My uncle James, we call him Cleo a lot because my dad always called him Cleo. His brother James and Betty. It's so good to see them. And as he said, we haven't been able to get together as much as a family, but I'm really thankful to have this chance to come down here. And I just have to pinch myself sometimes that the fact that I feel so much better, you know. But at any rate, first, when I think about Marshall, I think about when I was a kid, because it's ironic, some of the memories I made at the lake out there, we used to camp out there and fish with my dad, were some of the things that I leaned on when I was so down and sick. You just grasp at anything. You know, we've all had our struggles, and you grasp for something to hold on to. And I would think about one of the fish I didn't catch was a bass that jumped up out of the water. We caught red ear bluegill that was known for that over there. Of course, this is in the 70s, so I don't know what's transpired. We lost a boat motor one time on the John boat. My dad borrowed this clunky motor and wouldn't start. Wouldn't start, fell off into the lake. But that's a story for another whole another story. But so. At any rate, I have good memories of Marshall and the lake and camping down there. So, but I mean, and we kind of talked about this morning. You know, you prayed, and by the grace of God, I'm here. Mm-hmm. And that pretty well sums up a lot of what to talk about. But you know, so then some of the questions to be answered is, how do you wind up? You go to work at 23 years old. You're married. You have a child on the way. And everything's going your way, you think, and how do you wind up at age 60 and it's taken a total of 4 transplants to keep you alive? Mm-hmm. It's just, so, well, I went to work September 1st, 1983. I was fine, I thought, but by that afternoon, I doubled up in pain at work and went to the hospital, and they told me, they knew I had hepatitis of some sort, but they didn't know what was causing this inflammation of the liver. So, that was a real encounter. When you're young, of course, you think you're unbreakable, right? You're going to live forever. And this was an encounter with, hey, maybe not. And some of the things they were talking about, I knew I might not even live to see my first child born. So I was absolutely devastated. That night, when they turned the lights off, I was just like, I went to the restroom just to pray, and I got on my knees, and I just felt distant from God. It wasn't that I didn't have any religious training or believe in God, but I did not feel close to God, and certainly not ready to enter this spiritual realm. So I did dedicate. I thought, if I can recover somewhat, I'm going to do better with my spiritual life. So I did recover. We had our baby and so forth, and my wife and I decided to go ahead and proceed. Well, it was like a year later, the doctor I was seeing said, I need to see somebody else. I don't really know what's wrong with you. So I went over to Carl, Dr. Greenberg, who is incredibly still there, and he's finally about to retire. He's 86. He's seen me through all of these things. So he told me, he says, I think it's primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is a relatively rare liver disease. It's unknown cause. They think it might be autoimmune disease or something genetic, but typically not passed on to your family and so on and so forth. So, in all of human history up until the late 70s, there was no treatment for this at all until Dr. Thomas Starzl had started working in the 60s with liver transplants, because kidneys, they were having some success, but they said, it was said with the liver, it'll never be done. It's too many, it's too complicated, there's too much blood flow. But he started to work on it, and in the 70s they got better, and finally in the 80s insurance considered it therapeutic, that you could actually, they would pay for it. So we knew that might be in the future, but you kind of get back in your routine, right? Everything's fine, you put it in the back of your mind. So we went ahead with our family. Jessica came in 85, actually 83, Jessica 85, and my youngest Rachel came in 89. The issue at that time more was, before Rachel was even born, I felt her mom was getting more melancholy. And I know, staying home with kids, it's demanding. And I was hoping after Rachel we would maybe make some adjustments, but she went into real depression after that, kind of a postpartum depression type thing, and told me that she really wasn't happy in the marriage anymore. And so, I mean, I knew I was getting sicker, but at the same time, in hindsight, I know that my illness wasn't, we would have not made it anyway, but it seemed to make things go quicker. And she said, I know you're going to need this surgery soon, so I won't leave until you get through that. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, it was over. And so, you know, there's been a lot of pain with all these medical things, but I can tell you that that pain of that separation, divorce, that I felt her mom was getting more melancholy. And I know staying home with kids, it's demanding. And I was hoping after Rachel we would maybe make some adjustments, but she went into real depression after that, kind of a postpartum depression type thing, and told me that she really wasn't happy in the marriage anymore. And so, I mean, I knew I was getting sicker, but at the same time, in hindsight, I know that my illness wasn't, we would have not made it anyway, but it seemed to make things go quicker. And she said, I know you're going to need this surgery soon, so I won't leave until you get through that. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, it was over. And so, you know, there's been a lot of pain with all these medical things, but I can tell you that that pain of that separation, divorce, that loss of that dream of the whole family was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I just was so devastated. But at the same time, the kids helped, a little bit the rejection helped motivate it, but the kids, being there for the kids and knowing that was my biggest ministry, helped pull me through. And in June of '91, I was able to get liver transplant. And so it's the type of thing they tell you, and it saves your life, because when you get one of those, you're sick enough to get an organ transplant, you're at the top, to come to the top of the list, you have to be really sick. So at any rate, though, but you take this immune suppression, it's kind of, you have to take care of it. You have to do what they tell you to do. And immune suppression is hard on the kidney. So, but at any rate, we did wind up divorcing, but I said, go ahead with your fulfillment, whatever you need to do, but please don't interrupt our lives as far as with the kids. Let them stay in the same home, school, and their friends. It's so important. And so we did agree to that. It was joint custody. We have physical custody. So I was pretty much a single parent. They were 7, 5, and the little one was 20 months. And so, but I tell you, that night I had to leave for the transplant was one of the hardest things, because I didn't know that I would see my kids again, especially the little one would never even know her dad. So when I woke up from that first surgery, I was so, of course I was the drugs, you're high. I was so excited, and I was trying to write because I was still in the vent. And they're like, yeah, you're okay. Yeah, you made it. Calm down. So, but anyway, so me and the kids, we went on and sort of started to meet some of my goals between 91 and unfortunately I began to have signs of recurrence. That's one thing with the disease. They hope it doesn't come back. You only need once a transplant. They told me early on with the first one that we want to make an old man out of you. This isn't just to get you along. And I was able to go back to work and resume my life with the power company. Worked for Illinois Power and then later Ameren for just almost 40 years. I made it. But so during that time when I got the older two, the oldest one was through high school and in college, and Jessica was very independent, junior, senior in high school. But I was worried about my youngest because she was 14. She was more sensitive of the kids. And so I'm getting real sick again. I'm like, God, please, I've got to keep going to raise my baby. And I mean, but at that time, I felt better spiritually. And I think about, so my Uncle James, I consider him the spiritual leader of our family, and has been for some time. But his mother, my grandmother, Ruby, who I never met, I would just feel like I was going to meet her soon. My dad had so much love and respect for his mother, that it was incredible to, somebody I didn't meet, but through what he talked about her and her importance of her faith and how her faith is lived out still today. But I thought I was really going to not make it that time. But again, so through prayer so liver disease is really terrible. It's one of the things it can do to you is a mental confusion. But it gets bad enough that you're not clearing things out of your system. And one day in particular, fortunately I called into work, but my daughter happened to check on me before she left, and didn't realize I was going into a coma. And she said, "Dad, you okay?" I said, "No." And so we called for help. And when they came, I wanted to fight everybody. That's just how whacked out of my mind I was. But fortunately, my motor skills were so bad I couldn't land a punch on. I couldn't hurt anybody, but it was just really hard to handle. But we were me and the kids, we got a call. We went to the hospital in April 13, 2004, and they got me all ready, and we were all excited, and they came in about 3 in the morning and said, "Sorry, there's a problem with the donor, and we can't do this transplant." So we sucked it up. We didn't really cry or anything. We just, it didn't work out. So we went home, and we pulled in the garage. My daughter was driving, and the kids, their first thought was, "Do we have to go to school today?" And I said, "Absolutely not, guys. You've been up all night." But as it worked out, that afternoon I called back, and my sister took me this time, and again, we were blessed. God blessed me with another transplant, and so again, we picked up the pieces, kept moving on, and I happened to go to a ballroom dance in 2009, and my youngest was actually working at the front desk. And I went out to visit with her between dance lessons, and there was 2 ladies sitting there, because people that would come for the dance couldn't go inside until the lessons were done. So bad I couldn't land a punch on. I couldn't hurt anybody, but it was just really hard to handle. But me and the kids, we got a call. We went to the hospital in April 13, 2004, and they got me all ready, and we were all excited, and they came in about 3 in the morning and said, "Sorry, there's a problem with the donor, and we can't do this transplant." So we sucked it up. We didn't really cry or anything. We just, didn't work out. So we went home, and we pulled in the garage. My daughter was driving, and the kids, their first thought was, "Do we have to go to school today?" And I said, "Absolutely not, guys. You've been up all night." But as it worked out, that afternoon I called back, and my sister took me this time, and again, we were blessed. God blessed me with another transplant, and so again, we picked up the pieces, kept moving on, and I happened to go to a ballroom dance in 2009, and my youngest was actually working at the front desk. And I went out to visit with her between dance lessons, and there was 2 ladies sitting there, because people that would come for the dance couldn't go inside until the lessons were done. And so one of the ladies was my wife over here. So I saw her, and so my wife is from the Philippines. She has a lot more interesting, geographical history than I do. She was born and raised in the Philippines, and her mom had a great desire to go back to Hawaii, where her mom had been born. So her mom said, "If you don't get married here when you're 20 years old, we're going to take and go to Hawaii." And so she did, and she lived in Hawaii for 10 years. And so, but anyway, the most important thing about meeting her was that we had these wonderful times. We got married in Hawaii in 2013. But when it came to things really falling apart last year, sometimes you feel so bad for your family, what your illness is putting them through. You just feel terrible about it. But there's nothing all you can do is try to hang in there for yourself. And I'd see the pain in my wife's face, my kids, and then because of COVID, a lot of times I got no visitors. Barnes was not allowing anyone in. And so this was difficult also. But I was in the hospital. I don't know when my uncle started telling you about it, but I started dialysis in January because, again, that immune suppression, all the things that had happened over the years, the various surgeries to fix this or that, had beat up my kidneys so bad that, eventually I had to go on dialysis. And then shortly after that, I started not waking up my treatments. I was confused and so on and so forth. So off I was to the hospital, in and out. And oftentimes I would lose track of a week or two at a time with this mental confusion. So the dialysis helped for a while, but for whatever reason, then my liver did fail with the same disease. But it did, it got me 16 years. We had gotten during that time all the kids through school and jobs, married, and started on grandkids. So that was my big motivation. That my wife, I would be so down and so sick, and I'd say, honey, I don't know. I usually would tell her, I wouldn't tell the kids, I don't know that I can hold on and keep doing this. And she'd say, honey, you have to. You have to for the grandkids. You have to for me. And it would just, I would see her pain, and I knew she was right. But sometimes you just can't pull for yourself. Mm-hmm. I could not even pull for myself. I couldn't concentrate good enough. I couldn't watch TV program. I'd had eye surgery. I still have vision problem from that, but I couldn't see very good to text on my phone and things like that. So it was really a dry point. And like I say, I go back to, I'm thinking about the lake, Marshall Lake, and I'm thinking about songs my wife played and recorded for me on a ukulele about Hawaii and about some of these wonderful things, and I play those in my mind because in the ICU and that, I was afraid to go to sleep. I was afraid I wasn't going to wake up, and I couldn't, the staff, I'd say, am I going to make it through the night? Well, we hope so, but we don't know. So it was just a tremendously difficult experience. And I see the way you guys are sharing today, so I feel the power of your prayers and your concern and caring has really helped pull me through. And there's so many things that's happened over the years, and I just tried to condense it here because I know Tim has a message to give. But through this process recently, my wife was on me about it, and I got a friend who's an author, so I'm trying to write a book about this whole experience. My friend teases me. He says, you got enough for a whole series. But he writes children's books, but, he says, we'll get you published through Amazon, Kindle, whatever, self-published. But anyway, so that's another work. Always before I was able to go back to work, and right now if I was physically able, which I probably would have now my vision, my limitations with my vision. And so, in fact, Amron in 2019 had told me, he says, you can't pass your physical with your kidney failure, you're going to have to retire, take disability. And, that was devastating, a long career, but when these things pile up over time, then you just keep losing a little bit here and there. But, again, praise God that's given me another chance, and to come down and visit with you guys today is very inspiring for me. Thank you.